So tariffs not only loses people money in their pocket because they're paying higher costs, drives inflation higher. Where's the upside? Why is Trump doing it?
He's a businessman. He knows how to put pressure on someone and then how to come to a solution. They bowed so quickly to the pressure from these tariffs because what Trump actually wanted.
Hello and welcome to The Market Edge. This week we're focusing on Trump's tariffs and more importantly how you can benefit from them.
Yep, we're going to be looking at trades that you can make in FX and the commodity sector this time.
We're going to be looking at electric vehicles. Porsche has done a U-turn on their electric vehicle promises. What does that mean for the sector?
Do us a favour, like and subscribe if you are watching on YouTube. And if you're listening on your podcast platform, hit the follow button just so that you can get our content every 2 weeks direct to your inboxes.
Right, let's look at how myself and David did with our weekly picks this time. But we're going to start off actually with the tweet of the week. Now, the tweet of the week, we will get to our meme of the week later on, but our tweet of the week is great. In fact, there's been quite a lot of good ones this week that have been a lot of politicians really going at each other, which I tend to like. This one was great. This was an American politician talking about the Chagos Islands, and the best part about this is that he wasn't impressed with the UK's stance on this area, but he basically came out and said that Keir Starmer needs to put down the bong, which I think you'd find a lot of people in the UK would probably agree with.
Yeah. He's gone from paying £9 billion to Mauritius, who's never owned these islands, to now £18 billion, again to give away islands that they've never owned.
Yeah.
That is a massive security threat to do so because obviously China is expanding all over the world. And it literally makes no sense.
No, there is. But we often come on and you'll go, this doesn't really make any sense. When we say that this makes zero sense.
There's no sense.
This is paying money for something that nobody owns.
Exactly, but it highlights the key issue of the UK, and this is actually specific to markets and the UK economy too, which is why we're highlighting it. Which is that there are people here who are making nonsensical decisions that are directly affecting the economy. Rachel Reeves has said that there's a black hole, right? Why are you giving away £18 billion for no reason when there's a...
Now, it's widely thought there is this no black hole exists, right?
There is no black hole that exists. This is the whole point. If you were to compare the deficit spending from now to, or the deficit to GDP now compared to 2010 when the Tories took over, the deficit to GDP now is half that.
Yeah.
And so there's no requirement to do the same policies that they were doing back in 2010. And so it's just reflective of how stupid and misaligned this government is. And the worries that we have now is that there are people like Lord Hermer and Philippe Sands, who are KCs, very well respected on the international stage, not in the UK stage, who have led cases consistently against the UK. I mean, for an example, Lord Hermer was the one that proposed to give Gerry Adams, the leader of the IRA, compensation.
Yeah.
None of the cases that these two have ever been on has been in the UK's interest. And this court ruling from the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, is non-binding, so they don't have to do it. And it is also led by Russian and Chinese judges.
I mean, you couldn't make a lot of this up, really, could you? I mean, you couldn't make this up. How much the UK are just this little puppy dog in the corner, pumping money out to everybody else.
The issue here is that Starmer is a lawyer at heart.
Yeah.
He's a human rights lawyer at heart.
Yeah.
And Starmerism is proceduralism and managerialism. He cares more about following the procedure rather than the actual outcome.
Yeah.
Whereas a normal person would have just said to this court, it's non-binding, get lost.
Yeah. We're not giving away money for no reason.
What the Tories said they were doing was they were opening the conversation and then they were just going to
close the conversation
and delay it. No. They were just going to keep delaying it until they eventually gave up. They would say, let's have this talk. Let's have this talk. Whereas what Starmer's done is just come in straight away, piled in like an absolute nutcase and just said, you get £9 billion when we don't even have any... We don't.
Close.
when we don't even have any money ourselves.
But this is mad, right? Because this government, and let's go on to a bit of government bashing because we do enjoy that here. But to come in for this government, have a lower approval rating than the Tories had, have no foresight as to what they were going to do when they got into power, have this full manifesto that they've completely and utterly ignored, and the biggest one being, of course, in the last couple of weeks, since we recorded again, they've decided to put council tax up for millions of people, right? Even though, of course, they've said numerous times that taxes won't be raised. Taxes won't be raised. You can see the memes all over the place. Taxes won't be raised.
I think the biggest issue is that what they're doing is they're saying more money's going into working people, but in fact, and this is why the approval rating is so low for Starmer, is because they're actually doing austerity. Mm-hmm. They are committed to austerity, but the problem is that they're gaslighting the whole of the UK, because what they're saying is your taxes won't go up. They're saying they're going to improve education standards when Bridget Phillipson is actively looking to ruin the state school sector, because all of the poorest private school kids are now entering the state school.
Yep.
And half of UK schools have said that they're going to make teachers redundant. So you've got this influx of
more students, less teachers.
Fewer teachers. Brilliant. Now, the other thing as well that is completely insane is that inflation's up, but they've locked the tax bans. Yeah. Now, this was also a Tory policy, of course, so we can't just blame Labour. But the fact of the matter is that they do not know what they are doing. They do not understand how to policy make. Yeah. And yet they keep talking about putting more money into people's hands, and it just doesn't make sense. Anyone with a little bit of economics knowledge, markets knowledge, can see what the low-hanging fruit here is. Yeah. And this is what's so frustrating and why I'm so furious with them.
Do you know what? We'll get on to, this whole point of gaslighting the British public is so interesting, because we'll get on to what's going on in the US a little bit later. But the same gaslighting is going on, but just in the reverse way. We'll get on to that in a little bit. Let's look at our winners and losers for our last pick. Nvidia was you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It got smashed after DeepSeek, right? So we spoke about it in the last podcast. The whole DeepSeek story broke. Shares got smashed in Nvidia, in tech for a couple of days. Bit of a bloodbath, a bit of panicking going on. But exactly what you said last week.
Yeah.
Why is everyone going to panic about it?
Well, exactly. And what came out afterwards was there were various companies that said exactly the same as I did.
Yeah.
Is that they had the H100 clusters. Yeah. And it was obvious. Yeah. There is absolutely no way that you can. There's a simple mental model, and I said it on last episode. It is that whenever China says that they've done something absolutely amazing to try and fight the US, just completely consider them as liars.
Yeah, disregard it. If they say it costs this much, quadruple it,
Oh, more.
Yeah.
They said it costs £5.8 million.
£5.8 million. That's what we're
the amount of H100 clusters you'd need, right? It would cost in the billions, basically. And so, it's just the same story. They did the same over the housing market.
Yeah.
They've done the same over GDP. They said that GDP was at 5% at the start of the year. How? If you've seen pictures of Shanghai shopping centres recently, like I have, they're boarded up. They're the same as walking down Croydon High Street, which is not a place you want to be ever.
No offence to anyone who lives in Croydon.
No, complete offence, sorry. China is in a pickle, demographically and debt focused. So it's just a simple mental model you can use. America is the core of capitalism, whether you like it or not. And so it's always going to find the solution because the incentives are aligned to do so.
Yeah. And we said this about this last week, didn't we? That it was just a massive PR story. And there it was,
Big time.
For all to see. And back to that, Nvidia started to jump higher. And of course now, Nvidia, that was a pure example of, bad news story.
By the blood.
Full, by the dips, right?
Yeah,
there you go.
By the blood.
Okay, next one was Cameco. Cameco hasn't really done too much over the last couple of weeks. Been fairly flat. It's still in that similar situation. Jumped around a bit. Nice little range play, to be perfectly honest.
It's up nicely in pre-market. If you're an options player, you can probably look at the IVs and see what kind of structure to put on. Perhaps an iron condor for the next month or so, just to maintain an in the money range. So for me, Cameco is one of those bets where we're looking at nuclear power becoming actually really, really important on a small scale. So more frequency of nuclear power, whereby towns, for example, have their own nuclear reactor.
Yeah.
Whereas you're not getting it from a massive, almost macro broad grid. It is, here's your nuclear reactor, and it can power a town of, say, 20, 30,000 people.
But this is why renewable energy doesn't work in the UK, right? At the moment, there's not enough nuclear power stations.
Well, it doesn't work in the UK because
we
haven't got any sun, and the wind.
This is being recorded at a time where basically the sun hasn't shone for about 18 months. It feels like.
Yeah,
so.
And the wind stops winding. Yeah, basically. And so what happens?
So if it's not windy and not sunny, wind power and solar power don't work that well.
Yeah. But and you know, renewable energy does indeed have the lowest marginal cost, but the problem with it is that when you're not then buying masses of fossil fuels on the market, you're not getting that discount. And so the wholesale price of fossil fuels increases when you actually need them because you're buying less of it. Now what that means is that the marginal cost of renewables absolutely increases because, you know, the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always wind. And so you have to fill in those gaps with now these really expensive non-renewable resources. And so the answer will always be nuclear, in my view.
Anyway, the side point to that was that Cameco's doing all right.
Yeah, it's all right. It was up in pre-market anyway.
Up in pre-market, you know, it's done all right. It's not the end of the world. Brings us to our meme of the week.
Yeah, Trump golden showering himself.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we never thought we'd be saying golden shower on this podcast. We've now said it twice.
Well, we're on Twitter now, so we can say what we want, basically.
Like. Yeah, Elon's in control.
Elon loves us.
Yeah, Elon does love us, I think. Yeah, anyway. Just to explain this meme to everybody who's not watching on YouTube, this is a cartoon of Donald Trump weeing into a Canadian fan. The fan has a Canadian flag on it and is... Obviously, that is then blown back in his face. We need to kind of explain a little bit what these tariffs are. Now, of course, the tariffs are just levies going on the importing of these goods, right? So steel was spoke about yesterday, right? So Donald Trump's going to add a tariff, so an extra cost onto steel that is imported into the United States. Now, that all sounds great on the face of it. It was an election pledge by Donald Trump. This would go back to what we were saying about UK government. You know, he's doing everything that he said in his manifesto, and the people love him. It was the Super Bowl on Sunday, right? He was there, first sitting president to go to the Super Bowl. He was absolutely the biggest cheer of the night was when Donald Trump was shown on the big screen, right? So his approval rating is insane. Now, even though what is widely thought about tariffs is, yes, okay, you add import tax onto all of these goods coming into the United States, right? The biggest critic of a tariff will say there is only one person that pays for that import tax, and it is the consumer, right? That's the biggest problem because the tariff goes on to the companies importing the steel or whatever good it may be, and all they do is raise the costs. So tariff not only loses people money in their pocket because they're paying higher costs, drives inflation higher. Where's the upside? Why is Trump doing it?
So if you look at it from what's already happened, he said that he was going to impose tariffs on Canada and Mexico. Yeah. But then after discussing with Trudeau and discussing with, what's her name? Yeah, the Mexican president, I can't remember, it ends in Baum, I think. Yeah. I can't remember her name now. Quickly, they've shifted them to being imposed on March the 1st because the discussion actually is about fentanyl and immigration. Yeah. They bowed so quickly to the pressure from these tariffs because what Trump actually wanted was control of immigration and control of fentanyl coming into the US.
Well, the reason that Mexico got away with it a little bit, they said, okay, we'll accept a lot of our all of the immigrants back.
They did that.
That was one key point. And because Mexico weren't going to take them back, right?
And they've also sent 10,000 soldiers to the US-Mexico border. Yeah. Because lots of the immigrants from Guatemala and all of the other states, which are, I think, actually worse in terms of violence, crime and things like that than even Mexico. Imagine that. Yeah. I mean, obviously, Bukele fixed El Salvador in a year by just sending everyone to jail. Yeah. Which was good. All the worst people to jail. Maybe we should do that here.
Send bad people to jail.
That's such a crazy policy. Yeah. And that's really what he wanted. I think a lot of people criticizing it saw it as a bit of a surface level thing. Oh, you put tariffs up, this is the outcome. When actually, he's a businessman. He knows how to put pressure on someone and then how to come to a solution.
Yeah.
Not all of his policies are good. I don't agree with the comments at all on Palestine, Gaza, for instance. I think that was a bit insane.
In fact, probably almost one of his most dangerous comments ever.
I just thought it was silly. You can have your thoughts, but like, why would you ever say that you want to level it and build a casino or build these real estate?
He said he wanted it to be like a Riviera. I mean,
which fine, okay, there can be development of somewhere, but at the same time, what you're really saying there is you just want to change all of somewhere, and whether you agree or not, I don't want to get into that conversation.
Definitely not.
But I think for a president to say that at such a time is just silly, especially when you're having sort of an America first perspective.
Yeah. I mean, just going back to this point on tariffs, we've seen that it drives loads of market movement. It drives loads of volatility in markets. Now, we'll come to one of them when we talk about the picks, but from a currency and commodity perspective, this is where we see the movements, right? Now, we saw dollar CAD and dollar MEX, and we'll talk about the currencies a little bit later in the picks, but they had huge moves, which is always going to happen. And when you're talking about tariffs, you're talking about costs, you're talking about this will drive inflation up, talking about has issues on both sides of the coin, it's going to affect currencies the most. Most people trading currencies, a lot. And that volatility, okay, it breeds opportunity, but you've got to be careful within those. But from a commodity side, that's where it gets interesting, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think, as you say, from an FX perspective, I think it's interesting. I'm still waiting to see the extent to which the tariffs on the EU go.
Yeah.
If they're softer than everyone expects, I think the euro really, really rallies versus the dollar. Everything's a surprise premium or expectations. Delta difference, expectations premium, if you like. And so if they're softer than what's expected, euro will benefit massively, even if there is a tariff imposed.
Isn't this not always the case with Trump, though? He's widely regarded that his bark is worse than his bite, right? It's all rhetoric most of the time. Okay, tariffs do get imposed, but look at Mexico, look at Canada. We're going to put these tariffs on. Okay, there's dialogue. We'll delay them. So this is where we're getting this movement. Right?
He doesn't care about the actual tariff. That's not the game here.
He cares about getting what he wants.
He cares about the other things that he actually wants, exactly. So rather than care about, we actually want some taxation income from this, it's not about that. It's about how it incentivizes different behavior.
Yeah.
And so on a micro level in the discussions, the incentive for Trump would have been, we want to fix this fentanyl issue. We want to fix this immigration issue because that's what the voters care about.
Yeah.
But from a surface level economic perspective, yes, there's going to be hardship on both sides, but he doesn't care about that because he knows America has the leverage.
Yeah.
On both sides as part of NAFTA, as part of, pretty much just being the most powerful country in the world. So
where does the commodity upside come from within this, right? So we've got these discussions. We're going to hear trade wars and tariffs as, the buzzword for probably the next 12 months.
I think the key one is China.
Yeah.
It's absolutely China. Australia will face problems as well because China imports so many metals from Australia.
Yeah.
But one of the most interesting ones is tungsten. Okay.
Right.
Now, you can't trade tungsten. It's, something that is
What is tungsten?
It's one of the most dense metals you can get, but it's heavily used in chips and also solar.
Yeah.
So you can imagine...
I just let you know, I didn't know what tungsten was until like 3 seconds ago.
So you can imagine the extent to which a stranglehold there will cause, higher prices everywhere.
Yeah.
And so that tends to have a ripple effect across everything. Yeah. But what we're seeing at the moment is just commodities, I guess, super cycle since the start of 2024. Even if you look at softs, coffee, if you look at wheat, corn, all rallying quite strongly. So it's a very, very interesting time for the commodity side of things. And any more stringent trade war stuff will definitely be affecting China in the main. But China doesn't have the same economy or leverage as it did, say, 6-7 years ago.
Last time Trump was waging trade wars.
They don't have the same economy. Lots has deteriorated in China since then. And so... it's going to be more punitive for China than anyone else. They've got 10% on China, don't they?
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Okay, so let's look at the chart of the week. Now, chart of the week is on EVs, right? Electric vehicles, EV sales. Now, it comes in. We said at the start, there's this point around Porsche. You know, they're rolling back from their tactics of producing more EV cars, rolling back to combustion. That's been quite a big story. We've seen a lot of companies maybe looking in this way. We hear a lot of rumblings that a lot of places can't shift EVs. Yet, the chart of the week shows that EV sales are up in pretty much every developed nation.
Everywhere apart from Germany.
The home of cars.
Yeah. But interesting about Germany is that since 2016 maybe, new car registrations has actually collapsed in half generally. Yeah. So it's not an EV specific thing. It's mainly to do with Germany being such a sorry state. Yeah. That there's no real consumption going on anymore. Now, the interesting thing with Porsche is that there is no Porsche electric car that I like. And I don't think anyone does.
Yeah. Could be a sweeping generalisation.
Well, there's a couple of EV fans out there. I think
2 or 3 maybe.
The problem with EVs is that they've been so incentivized by government policy. You know, if you own a business and you buy an EV, you get
massive tax
massive write-off. Yeah. And it's like, I don't know if anyone really wants them. Maybe apart from Tesla. I think Tesla.
The thing is, people don't really want them because they're not very good.
Well, this is the thing, and also the upkeep. Cost after when they actually degrade and the battery degrades, you may as well get a brand new car rather than a new battery.
But this is why the government are so keen on doing so. Government in the UK, I don't know what it's like everywhere else. Government in the UK doing the electric vehicle scheme, so you get massive tax breaks as a business. Yeah, but they take care of everything, insurance, because they can't shift these cars. But why do these numbers continuously show upside? But it's 2 points here. The numbers show upside. We go back to talking about Porsche, and Porsche is your pick, right? From a charting perspective. But the US have also, even though Elon Musk is now in the government pretty much, but they're rolling back on EV promises as well.
Well, yeah. And I think it's heavily to do with the oil sector. I actually think it's a broader point. Yeah. Whereby the US is a huge producer of oil, the biggest in the world, actually. More than Saudi, more than anyone, which is why I never bought the argument as to why they went to the Middle East for oil 20 years ago, because it just didn't really make sense. They were even back then probably like top 2, 3 largest producers of oil. And so I think it's more of a play on just to solidify the oil industry in general and the petroleum industry, and getting back to something that requires American workers. Whether that's a good thing or not, completely debatable, you know. But I think this is where sort of Trump and this administration's head is at. That's kind of what people say on Love Island. And I think
Donald Trump on Love Island. There's a thought.
Yeah, it'd be very funny, wouldn't it? And I think look, it's we're in the Porsche case. It's just not Porsche like having an electric car.
No, and
it's not like. Could you imagine an electric Ferrari?
Well, no, I can't. Looking at the Porsche chart, it's had a big sell-off on the back of on its recent performances, I suppose, right?
It's at all-time lows. Yeah. It listed in 2023, 2022, I think maybe. And I think that...
So this is like a reset, right?
This is
falling aggressively, share price-wise, which means values are going down. They're focusing on EVs, but now this is kind of potentially almost a reset and going, let's do what we're good at.
This is how I think of things, is that, okay, you've hit an all-time low in your share price, but then this massive news comes out that you're looking to completely switch the business. Yeah. For me, that big switch tends to signify a change in sentiment. I think investors who are very much like me, very much like, actually you own an electric car, so maybe not like you.
It's cheap.
But investors...
People on there instantly going, no, turn it off.
But investors, generally I think they would probably prefer Porsche to be combustion.
To be Porsche.
To be Porsche, exactly, there you go. Yeah. And I think that's exactly it. Porsche is synonymous with nice, loud V8, lovely back shape, and just fast, but in a loud, brash way. What they've always said about Porsche drivers and, small things.
Trying to think of a way we can say it on the podcast.
Porsche drivers and small things is because they're loud cars. and it's to replace something. Whereas an electric car doesn't really do that. It just means that, you definitely are small.
Let's swiftly move on to dollar CAD. So dollar CAD on the back of, now this is a daily chart, and I've just, I used to work in like a help desk years ago for all sorts of brokers, right? Client services help desk. And even when I was an analyst back then, you would get sent chart after chart after chart to say of clients looking at technical analysis, looking at saying, what can I'll put these lines on this chart. What does this look like? What does that do? The crap you would get on these charts. There'd be so much on it, you couldn't even see the price action, right? Most important thing on a chart is the price action, right? What the price is doing. Now, dollar CAD, you can see the movement over the last couple of days. Big red candle. If you can't see it if you're listening, you definitely can't see it if you're listening. So I'll try and explain. But it had a big spike up, but then fell, right? Fell off a cliff. This was tariffs, so I've been talking about, right? It come down to a very key support level. I can't see it because my eyes are too bad, but it came back to a very key support level, which is right around the 50-day moving average on a daily chart as well, and is right on a potential start of a trend line, right? Now, all we're saying from this, and this is another pick of the week, currencies, I know we're looking shorter term. I know this is a daily chart, so give me a break from that perspective. But there is in that little axis there's a 50-day moving average, or 100-day, I can't even remember what moving average is because my eyes are so bad. But you've got, three key areas where you'd be looking at quite an easy strategy from this perspective.
Yeah.
It either bounces from here, or if it breaks, it falls back lower, right?
Yeah.
And it's quite simple from that perspective. Now, fine, you've got a lot going on geopolitically, you've got a lot going on in terms of macroeconomics that come out that can move these things, but from a purely technical perspective, just got this little axis where you're saying, okay, well, it's either going to go one way or the other, but all I've got to do is give it a little bit of breathing space one way to the upside or downside and make my decision off the back of that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's a tiny bit of downside here, but then we see a resumption of the previous trend.
Because from October, this has been rallying.
Yeah, and I think the dollar goes in much longer cycles than 4 or 5 months.
And dollar index hit a new high today, right?
What's that, sorry?
Day of recording. Dollar index has hit a new high today. Fresh highs this morning.
Yeah, I think, was that because the euro fell through 1.03 a tiny bit?
Yeah.
It's rallied back up now about 40, 50 ticks though.
Yeah.
But I think the euro has the biggest input on the direction of the dollar. Obviously, it's the one that's traded most. 57% of global trade is done with the euro versus the dollar. And so I think, we might see a little fall off here, but very idiosyncratic to the dollar CAD pair. I think the broader trend for the dollar is still to the upside. However, I am also bullish the euro shorter to mid-term, purely because I'm betting on the tariff issue being far less harsh. Yeah. On
Trump bark versus bite.
Yeah, I think it's going to be far less harsh on the eurozone than first believed, and so there should be a bit of a reversion. So there's upside there.
You've also got, going back to the CAD for a second, you've got political uncertainty from their perspective. Who's going to come in? Might be Mark Carney, ex-governor of the Bank of England, widely tipped to be the next prime minister in Canada. So there's political uncertainty. There's the dollar that loves to go up, and we've got quite a nice couple of picks there as to what we can see.
Perfect.
Apart from that, thanks very much for watching. If you like what we're saying, if you like our picks, let us know. More importantly, if you don't like them, let us know. If you want to tell us about your thoughts on each government that we keep banging on about every week, then do that as well. If you're watching on YouTube, like, subscribe, hit the bell. If you're watching on Twitter, X, retweet, or whatever they call it these days, and follow us.